Hello everybody, this is Louis from LoukProp and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with LoukProp. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, can I buy a second property without selling my current one? Now, this depends on a few factors and we'll be discussing today what are the various financial factors you have to consider if you do want to buy a second property without selling your current one. Now, to get it out of the way first, if you own a HDB that hasn't met its 5 years MOP, you won't be able to buy a second private property. But if you do own a HDB that is more than 5 years or a private property currently, let's begin to explore. Now let's first talk about the bank loan that you can take for your second property. If your current property still has an outstanding loan on it, do take note that your second property you can only take a max loan of 45% instead of 75% of the purchase price, right? If you do want to take a 75% loan on your second property, the only way you can do it is to pay off fully the outstanding loan on your current property. Now, this may already be a very big deterrent for some of you out there because if you can only take 45% loan, this means that you have to come up with a lot of cash and CPF, especially if your current property loan is a huge amount. The second thing you must take note of is the ABSD on the second property. Now, ABSD stands for Additional Buyer Stamp Duty. For a Singaporean, if you're buying a second property, that will be 17% of the purchase price. For a PR, that will be 25% of the purchase price. So if you don't plan to sell your current property within 6 months of purchasing a resale private property, or within 6 months of the TOP of a new launch project that you have bought, then you won't have any remission or refund of this ABSD. Now, because this ABSD is a huge amount, this may be your second biggest deterrent. Wait, click like, click subscribe, right? It will help the channel out a lot. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Now let's talk about CPF usage, right? For a lot of you out there, you may still have some amount of a CPF left in your ordinary account, your OA, and you might want to use it for your next property purchase. But do take note, if you are buying a second property, right, you must first set aside the basic retirement sum, which in 2022 is going to come up to be about 96K. Right? So this means that if you have to set aside 96K in your OA and your SA, your special account, the rest of the OA that is left behind, you can then use for your second property purchase. For a lot of younger owners out there, the combination of your current OA plus your current SA may not be able to cover the entirety of the basic retirement sum. So you might end up in a scenario whereby you may not be able to even use a single cent in your OA for your second property purchase. Now next, let's take a look at the cash that you have to use for this next property purchase. Now, assuming that you can only take 45% loan, you have to pay ABSD, and you can use little to none of your CPF OA, right? This will mean that you have to pay a lot of cash for this next property purchase, right? Let's take a look at an example. So for example, a couple, right? Both of them 35 years old, earning 7K each a month, have a combined 100K CPF OA currently, and have a 200K outstanding loan on their current existing property. Right? They want to buy a second property of about $1 million. So how does the calculation pan out? So if they were to buy a $1 million property, you have to first include their buyer stamp duty and their additional buyer stamp duty, right? That would add up to be about $1.195 million that they have to pay out. Now, assuming they can only take a 45% loan, which is 450K loan, right? They'll be left with 745K that they need to pay with cash and CPF. Now, as we mentioned earlier on, they have a 100K CPF OA. Assuming that both their SA, right, have already fulfilled the basic retirement sum and they can use the full 100K in their OA amount, all right, this would mean that the cash they need to pay up is 645K. Right? This is a lot of cash that you have to put in for your second property. Someone in this scenario might want to fully pay off their current 200K loan, right, to be able to loan 750K instead and thus saving 100K in cash, right? But even so doing, you will still have to pay 545K cash in this purchase, and for most people out there, this will be a very daunting task for them, right, to be able to come up with 545K just to buy a second property. So in conclusion, there are a lot of hurdles that you have to cross, right, just to be able to own a second property. While this may look very scary, there are other ways that you can do to own a second property without breaking the bank, right? One of the ways is to subscribe to the channel, because we will be coming out with a video very soon that talks about decoupling. Only if you own a private property, right? Not a HDB. Decoupling, right? Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. 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 Remember, subscribe. Subscribe. It's there. Subscribe. Huh? Hey, haven't subscribed? Subscribe. Subscribe. There, click there. Red color box. Subscribe. Okay? Subscribe, huh?